So, hello and welcome. My name is Meadhbh, and I am a member of the Glass Society of Ireland, former board member. I'm also an artist and maker based in Belfast. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us to this, the fourth day of the Glass Society Summer Festival. The theme of today has been conservation, and we've had a really interesting series of talks today on conservation of various different types of glass collections, including museum collections, how contemporary arts are sort of contemporary glass art is moved and restored, and also about conservation in the environment. So yeah, there's been an awful lot to digest, very interesting stuff, and I'm really delighted to be joined by this particular panel of speakers to continue that and wrap it up for the day. The reason that we are here is to celebrate and mark, I guess, the launch of a particularly fantastic project, in my opinion, called Bending Glass, which was initiated by Johanna and curated by Johanna Leech, who's on the panel tonight, and funded by the Northern Ireland Screen Digital Film Archive. She can correct me if I've gotten the terminology for any of these things wrong, but it has just gone online. It was a really fantastic multi-layered project that I had the pleasure of seeing back in, I think it was February. And the Digital Film Archive, because it is a resource, it's now all, well, I'm not explaining this very well, but it's all online, and you can see for yourself a lot of the documentation, how it brought together so many different elements. I'm going to actually just pop that link for anyone who didn't get it or look at it in the emails. I'm going to just pop that in the chat function now so you can look at some of it. There we go. And we're also, so it looked at neon, specifically the life and career of Adrian from AM Light. And we're joined by Chris, his son, and some other neon experts on a panel to sort of discuss some of the topics that get brought up in that. But first things first, I want to introduce Johanna, who was, as I said, the project curator, to tell us a bit more about how we got here, what her thinking was behind how the project came about, and a little bit more context. So let me just bring Johanna up on the screen. Pin. Okay. So your mind goes blank when you're just faced with all the other people on screen. So okay. Hi Johanna, welcome.
Hi everybody.
So
shall I just crack on?
I think that would be best for everybody. But yes, Johanna is an artist and curator based in Belfast, and she was the initiator of this particular project, and I think she can explain a lot better than I can what was so special about it and some of her thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Meadhbh. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to everyone in the panel for taking their time to come and have a discussion today. I really appreciate it. This is something that has been cooking in my head for about a year and a half. And I just decided, because I'm dyslexic, I can be a bit kind of scattered whenever I'm talking and then forget half of what I've said. So the first half of it I've beautifully written, and then the second half I'm going to wing it, but then I'll have some pictures, so hopefully that'll make it a bit more enjoyable. So just to let you guys know that the exhibition is basically built all around a place. So it's the UTV building, Havelock House. And I'm part of Flax Art Studios, and Flax Art moved into Havelock House in 2019, the former home of Ulster Television, now UTV. When I explored this TARDIS of a building, I found hidden rooms, corridors, and huge studios that I didn't even know existed when looking at the building from the outside. The building itself aesthetically was like stepping back in time, with navy or multicolored model carpet, grubby suspended ceilings, yellowing cream or burgundy walls, and the foyer was covered in what seemed like, at the time, a modern choice of miniature bronze tiles. And parts of the building would have slick wooden panels in the executive areas. It even had the show business light bulbs surround mirrors in the changing rooms. Behind the walls, floors, and ceilings were a mass of connected multicolored cables that ran throughout the entire building. So it was kind of a big empty shell by the time we moved into it. And we did find some things that were left behind. The studios themselves probably were small for TV shows, but they seemed so vast in height to me. And they had beautiful little viewing windows up high with checkered wired safety glass. I loved going up into the eaves and the upper gangway of the studios to see a bird's eye view. Flax even found bags of confetti that had been left up there from the Kelly show. And I couldn't help thinking that I wanted to work with this space, but I just needed to find something that connected it to my art practice. So during that time, based in Havelock, I was commissioned for another project, and I wanted to make a neon art piece for an exhibition. And I got in touch with the company AM Light, which fellow flax artist at the time, Michael Johanna, had recommended it. And Michael went on to be part of this exhibition. I had asked AM Light to recreate a sign from a photograph that I had taken in Kingston, New York. And the neon sign said, "Guns and gold," and that was it, in gold, and it was in a pawn shop window. So whenever I went to collect the work, I found out that Adrian, who is part of the team in his late 70s, was the main person that had put together the sign for me. And I spoke to Chris and Adrian that my studio was based in Havelock. And then they went on and told me, oh, you know, we've done all this work for UTV, including the Kelly show's main set piece, a neon sign of Jerry Kelly's signature. So even if you know, accept or deny you're growing up in Belfast or Northern Ireland, we've all watched parts of UTV. And I think that kind of Kelly show sign is almost ingrained in our brains. So I felt like this was the kind of connection that I've been hoping for. And, you know, the more I talked to Adrian and Chris, thing that I kind of realized is a lot of documentation of these neon signs made over the years was lost. Unless the guys making it had maybe, you know, kept some of the drawings. You didn't even really have a lot of photography, wasn't even accessible in the early years that Adrian would have been a glass bender. And whenever I kind of realized that that's what Adrian kind of calls himself, like the words glass bender had never kind of, you know, had together. And I just thought it was beautiful, which is why I went on to, you know, call the project Bending Glass. So I went on to meet up with Northern Ireland Screen Digital Film Archive, because those guys host all of the UTV collection. And I just said to him that, you know, after hearing Adrian's story, I just really wanted to make something about it. And it was going to be originally online content, like a video over lockdown that people could watch. But little did I know that this project would become a lot more. So archive footage fits so well with the aesthetics and history of Havelock House. Hundreds of hours of TV shows that were made in Northern Ireland are all on Northern Ireland Screen's Digital Film Archive, which you can watch for free online. I used it as my research tool, and I learned more about this flagship program, The Kelly Show, taking screenshots of the Kelly sign, diagonal stripped lighting on the studio walls, floors, and stage. Other shows from that era included the art show Spectrum, which also had striking neon as part of their design. And apparently this was always, neon was viewed better if you're kind of watching those kind of like older TVs. It was a really kind of vibrant, bright color that can instantly turn on and off for the stage. So you would be able to have things flashing or things looking like they were moving within your TV set. So I just kind of started to see the trend was throughout a lot of the programs, these diagonal shapes, symmetrical lighting in many of the shows. And they were all made to fit these small studios. So they all kind of had these like literal little like shapes and bits of stage that could be easily moved in and out of the studio. So I enjoyed also looking at the fact that when you put on all of these UTV shows, the first thing that comes up is those kind of color bars, and which is like kind of like the test bars that were used. And it just reminded me of my childhood. You can almost hear like that kind of buzzing sound. And then that also made me think of the neon. And then it also made me think of all the wires going through Havelock House. And Stuart Calvin, who's one of the artists in this project as well, had literally shown me, you know, like lifting up floors, and it just would have, the whole place is full of cables. Obviously, you get all the transmission of everything to do with the phone lines and UTV, the TV footage that was going out, and internet access and things like that. That could have been an art piece in itself if you could have pulled those out of the walls. So after that, I just kind of wanted to get you a flavor of what the building was like, because now when you look at it online, the building is actually one of the biggest art pieces within this exhibition. And for you experiencing it online, unfortunately, you might not be able to grasp it as much as seeing it in person. But I hope that kind of description of, you know, the quirkiness of it and that kind of lovable dinginess and quality of this kind of abandoned space is easily captured. So I just wanted to say a big thanks to Stuart Calvin, who was my collaborator. Stuart and I went on to make a Cali show installation in one of the rooms. He also filmed the AM Light interview. He did the photography. He did a video walkthrough tour, which you can watch online. So we'll really try and, you know, bring all those elements together on the Digital Film Archive website, so you can feel like you've visited the show as well. So I went to Stuart because I knew that he had made a neon, went back to Michael Hanna, who had also recommended AM Light to me. And then the most well-known artist that I know, and I've tortured for years with questions about neon, is Kevin Killen. And really wanted to get Kevin in on it as well. So I couldn't have done it without Sinead Branagh-Cashel, who's the curator, one of the curators at the Northern Ireland Screen Digital Film Archive, because anytime then I kind of, you know, like said, like an inspiration or a place or a name, Sinead was able to find it for me in the archive. So her depth of knowledge was fantastic. So it just means when you walk through this installation, it was integrated so deeply with the archive footage. And the fact that the archive footage was documentation of all of the stuff that AM Light had made, and we were able to actually see the work that Adrian had made, which was amazing. Bringing in other artists, Susan Hughes, I brought her in. She makes light boxes, and those kind of reminded me of walking around and you kind of had the on-air signals. And whenever UTV moved out, all of these were kind of ripped off the walls. So when you walked around the exhibition, you actually had these bits of cable where maybe an on-air, off-air was. And then hers were more of a kind of contemporary context, and there had stories attached to them. But the dark has come, you know, like the fact that, you know, this place is going to close down and the lights are going to go off is fantastic. And there's a written piece that you can look at online by Paula Blair, who made my words make sense. So she took together all of that and then also researched and brought in all of the stories with AM Light, as well as the history of UTV. And then Fionnuala Doran brought to life one of Adrian's favorite neon pieces, which was in Dublin a long time ago, like kind of like in the, I'm probably going to get this wrong, in the 50s or 60s. And she made a little animation of it. So it was a real collaborative project, and there's loads of elements. So when you look at it online, you'll see a general kind of splash page. And then when you go to the other sections, there's ones about each artist, and then it shows you the images that they have and all the documentation. So I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Johanna. It's so, obviously we've talked about this quite a few times, and I was privileged enough to have gone to see it when you had the physical exhibition, and I think it's really valuable that, you know, you're able to explain in words to all the people that are on this call all those little nuances of, because all the documentation is brilliant and it is all there, but if you didn't see it in person, it is interesting to see how all of those things tie together, from the building to the inspiration to like the different people that you got involved. So there's so much on that page, you know, within that link. I would recommend that everybody does go and get a cup of tea and pour over it if you're at all interested in glass, neon, media, film archive. There's some real gems that you brought out in the show. So now that we've heard from Johanna, I would just like to briefly introduce some of our other panel members, and how we've decided to format this is that I will introduce them and then they'll have about 5 minutes to share a little bit of context, because I know not everybody on this call will be familiar with everybody. So first up, because he's already been alluded to, we have Chris McNevison from AM Light. Very delighted to have you here, Chris. Let me just get the little bio that I have prepared on you. See, I freaked out before because I didn't have the bio prepared for Johanna. I was like, how could I have missed that? But anyway, AM Light have been creating exquisite bespoke lighting for over 50 years. Chris is Adrian's son, and he has started an apprenticeship with, Chris is currently the apprentice in the family business after coming from a career in mechanical engineering for several years before taking over the family business along with his dad. So Chris, take it away and explain better than I did what AM Light is all about and what you spend most of your time doing.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Johanna and Meadhbh. It's great to be here this evening and talk about all things neon, which is something very close to my heart, of course. My name's Chris, as you say. I'm from AM Light. We're based in Lisburn, close to Belfast, and our primary business is the manufacture and forming of neon tubes, neon signs. We've been in business since 1958. The business was formed by my father, Adrian, and it's always been part of the family, let's say, making neon, something we always grew up with, and seeing Dad taking pieces of glass and forming them over the fire, bending them into shape, and then creating light. And it was always a great interest when we were younger, as we were sort of maybe driving around the city centre in the evenings, and you would see all these pieces of work that my dad had created. And similarly, you know, when you're in the workshop and you see the work and the skill that goes into taking pieces of glass and forming it and eventually turning it into light. But it was fantastic on a personal level to be involved in the Bending Glass exhibition, just to see the life and work and the passion of my father being put all together in one place. And to reminisce as well over some of the work that was completed over the years, especially so in Havelock House. It was a huge part of the business in making neon signs and neon pieces for different television shows. Again, that goes back to when we visited the workshop when we were younger and we seen these different jobs being manufactured, and then to see them on television maybe a couple of weeks later, alongside huge celebrities like Jerry Kelly, Jerry Anderson, and other such well-known people. I guess to work along with Johanna, the first job we worked on was her Guns and Gold project, which was a really nice kind of old school gritty piece of neon from a pawn shop type setup like you would see on an old American movie. But to recreate pieces like that and the skill and the time that goes into to creating, bending and forming neon. But it was during the research for bending glass that we came across some old images of my dad. And perhaps, can you see that okay?
Yeah, well, I can. Everybody else.
Yeah, hopefully you can see that. That's a picture of my dad around about 1964, 1965, in his first workshop, actually on the Ormo Road, which is just across the road from Havelock House, where the Bending Glass exhibition took place. So this photograph had been found, and it was great taking it to my dad and showing him, you know, look, we've turned up this old photograph of you here. And he was able to point out that the actual sign that he was making there was for Old Bushmills whiskey. Just in his hand, you may see the shape of the WH, which has been formed. And in the background here, you'll see lots of other formed pieces of glass. So that was actually something that we recreated quite soon after. And we restored one of the original signs from the 1960s. So at the time, there were about 30, 35 of these signs which had been made. So it was great to have an opportunity to sort of reinstate this piece of history. And I guess that leads into the sort of materials and everything that we're working with when we work with neon, and that everything is, we work with glass and steel and brass and porcelain, very, very little one-use plastic, which I guess it's the sort of thing that can always be, nothing goes in the bin. Everything can be kept, restored and maintained. So it's always good to see pieces of work that we've created even, you know, 20, 30 years ago coming back into the workshop here to be restored. And just to touch on something else that, you know, obviously my dad's been working with neon since 1958. We work along with another family member here, a cousin. He's been working with neon for 40 years. And I've been working with the guys now for 25 years. I'm still referred to as the apprentice. That's where that comes from. I guess that context comes from you never stop learning. And while you have masters and master craftsmen that are willing to pass on their skill and expertise, you're always an apprentice. You're always learning. But if anyone's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, that was fantastic, Chris. Always the apprentice. One day, maybe not. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and then we'll circle back around to them once we've gotten through all of our panels. So it's good that you ended on a lovely note there of sustainability and conservation and things coming back to you, because our other speaker, or one of our other three speakers here, is Claire McGill, who is a conservator with the National Trust. For anyone who's not familiar with the National Trust is a charity and membership organisation for heritage conservation in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And Claire is the regional conservator for Northern Ireland and has worked on numerous restoration and conservation projects. In particular, she has worked on a neon project, which I think she's going to tell us a little bit more about. But because I'm pretty sure we have some people from the Republic joining as well, they mightn't be that familiar with National Trust, maybe you could give a bit of a wider context to your role, Claire. Just gonna pin you.
Sure.
There we go. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so Meadhbh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks actually for bringing me along and being part of this panelist tonight. It's a real pleasure just to be talking about glass conservation, but also just to share and showcase the project that I worked with Kevin Killen, who's also on the panel tonight. So as Meadhbh said, yes, I'm the regional conservator for the National Trust in Northern Ireland. My remit is collections care, so it's all sorts of collections from furniture and paintings right through to stone and glass, textiles and everything in between. And I look after 8 mansion houses in Northern Ireland, all the way from the west. So we've got Florence Court and Castlecool in Enniskillen, right through to the Mid-Ulster properties and over to the Ards Peninsula, where we have Mount Stewart and Castle Ward. So yeah, really big remit, but amazing collections and fantastic staff to work with. The main majority of my role is around preventive conservation. So that's, you touched on it earlier, Maeve, where you talked about environmental control, and it's about keeping the environment in our historic houses stable so that the furniture doesn't dry out or the textiles don't get too damp and sag. So we're always worried about the moisture in the air. I'm also interested in keeping the dust levels down, because we get hundreds of thousands of visitors through our gorgeous houses throughout the year. I'm also interested in keeping the light levels down so that we don't see fading and whatnot. And also security and emergency procedures come into all of my remit as well. That's the preventive end. And another part of my role is then the remedial end, where I actually commission conservators to carry out work to our collections. And that's 4 days a week. And I've been that conservator for 15 years. But I am also a freelance accredited glass conservator, where I actually do hands-on, have my own studio, and conserve historical glass and contemporary glass as well, it has to be said. And you can find my details on the ICRI website. But yeah, I'm here to talk about the Argry, which is one of the Mid-Ulster properties, and the project that Kevin and I collaborated on together. The Argry was built in 1824, and for about 80 years it was lit by, you know, firelight, oil lamps and candles, as that was typical of country houses. But in 1906, the owner, Captain Shelton, did something really remarkable. He installed what he called artificial sunshine, which was acetylene gas lighting. So it was seen as the most innovative, highly technological advances of the time. It was far easier to install than electricity or a coal gas system, and it was much cheaper to run. So yeah, he was the first house in Ulster to install the acetylene gas lighting, and I'm happy to say that we still have all of the fittings today. And about 5 years ago, we started a 3-year rolling program to begin to clean and to conserve each of those brass fittings, which are really quite unique. Obviously, we don't run the acetylene anymore. It's a real health and safety risk, because what it is actually is calcium carbide exposed to water, which would produce this acetylene gas, and it gives off this really brilliant white light, which actually is very comparable to the neon light that we know of today. So anyway, we worked through most of the light fittings, but we left the most trickiest one to last. That is the 2-tiered 1820s pendant in the West Hall of the Argry, and it's majestic. It's over 3 flights of stairs, and just massive big mother of a pendant that had become very blackened by all the dust and dirt and corroded in places, and just really looked awful and lacked luster. But we wanted to get our head around how all the other light fittings worked and how they could be cleaned before we started on the last one. And so we got funding to do the conservation, and working alongside our metal conservator, Rupert Harris, who's based in London, we began to think about taking this big piece down and transporting it over to London. But it got me thinking, you know, normally when I commission conservation and the object goes to a studio, we put up a really nice little sign and some interpretation and say, gone for conservation, back in 6 months, come and see it. And this time round, I thought, why don't we try and put something really innovative and really different in its place? And I began to think about the acetylene light itself. And also, the last donor of the house was a gentleman called Mr. Bond, and he was an avid collector of Ulster art, and he was always around buying the latest, most contemporary pieces to support local artists. And I'd recently been to a show at the F.E. McWilliam Gallery just there in Banbridge, and was speaking with the the curator there, Dr. Rianne Coulter, and there was a piece of Kevin's on display, and it was that sparked the interest in this local artist who made amazing neon light, and from that we began to have conversations with Kevin about what might be possible. Kevin came down onto site and walked the site and looked at the collection and spoke to our staff, and was so professional throughout and was able to create about 3 different designs for us, all very different, all on various styles and on various scales. And I'm delighted to say that we chose the biggest, brightest installation that we could. And so Kevin worked very closely with the Metal Conservation Advisor, with the scaffolders, and with us, the National Trust, to ensure that when the piece came down, that it was the original piece came down, that the neon piece was able to be put in place immediately. And it went up, and we hung it for a full year in the West Hall, and had a whole variety of feedback from our visitors. I think we had something like 75,000 people through the house that year, and we captured all their feedback. And the Argry actually appeals to extended families, so you'll get Granny and Granda coming with their son and daughter as well as their grandkids, and we captured their feedback, and it was really, really surprising. Let's just say the mature, older visitor loved it, absolutely thought it was great to see something really different in this historic space, whereas some of the younger generation thought that it looked god awful and just, sorry Kevin, but that it shouldn't have been there, that it was out of place, and maybe would look better in a museum gallery, or but actually the whole point was actually to provoke thought. It was around evoking some emotion, and it was really about that, rather more so whether that you liked it or not. It was all about what did you feel? What did you feel about it? So yeah, the year came and went, and we got Kevin back once the original piece was cleaned and conserved and ready to go up. And again, worked seamlessly with all the staff and the other contractors. And so the neon was taken down bit by bit. And the original was put back in place. But the neon then was placed in the back staircase, where the servant staircase, along with the other pieces of Mr. McIlgorm's contemporary art. So it sits really nicely there. It reads really well. And I would urge you to come to Middlester and come see it. Brilliant piece of art, really nice project to do, and really great to be able to merge the old with the new and jolt some of our visitors into thinking in a different way.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. That was really fascinating to hear about your roles, and I mean, it must be quite a job to be in charge. I was at a National Trust project house there in Castle Ward the other day, and there was just so many beautiful objects that, like, you know, you think people in museums have a hard job. Like, you definitely have lots of such a range of things to look after, and there's so many absolutely exquisite things under your care. I was just trying to put the little document that you sent through to me in the chat for everybody. I'm just going to stop screen sharing. A second. Okay. I personally love that piece, but I probably am a bit biased. And thankfully we're going to hear a bit more about it and some other works from the man himself, Kevin Killen. Kevin is a contemporary artist. Where's my notes? Based in Northern Ireland. His current practice is the creation of self-made neon light sculptures and installations, which are often site-specific. The works capture moments in time, representing life and people's physical journeys as snapshots in our lives. I'm sure a lot of you on the call will be familiar with his work anyway, but let's hear a bit more from the horse's mouth, let's say. Delighted you could join us, Kevin. Add pin. Here you go.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for the invite. And Johanna, thank you for the invite to the exhibition as well. Yes, I've worked with Chris, I've worked with Claire, and I've now worked with Johanna. I'm delighted to be a part of this. And I just really want to chat to you about neon. Obviously, I'm not from the conservative part of the world. I'm more of a visual artist who's happened upon neon in 2009. I went to the States, studied there for about a summer. A guy called Ed Walden. He has 50 years experience. There's very few people who would pass on that experience to anybody, and Ed was very gracious to do that. So from 2009 onwards, I kind of practice. And Chris would tell you, he's correct, you know, you're always learning stuff. I know very little compared to Chris, and Chris probably says the same about Gary and his father. It's quite a beautiful medium to work with, I find. I work with steel and I work with plastics and perspex, and neon's always the one that holds you to attention. You have to be careful with it, you have to be respectful for it. And I always admire that within a medium. You have to be so careful how to bend it and weld it and then process it. And I'm going to show you some work in about a couple of minutes, maybe, or a couple of seconds. I'll not hold you back too long. But I approach neon from a different point of view. A lot of people think of neon as signs or text or script. I kind of come to it as more of a concept way of how to trace movements through space and time, whether it be objects or whether it be people. I'm just going to chat to you a bit of some work I do here on a screen screw, I think. I'll try this. Is everybody seeing that? No? Okay, let's see. And then I'm going to do that. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, you're good.
Is that good? Yeah. So I just want to go back right back here. So navigate back here. So yes, I kind of trace a lot of stuff. So this is, I was just going to chat about where I started off. I started off a while back, and about 2014 really. I was tracing a guy called David Org. He was a dancer, and I used his movements really just to use the light trace. So I took long exposure photography, and I used those kind of light tracings or those light drawings, and then translated them into kind of artworks. So this is David here working away. You see him dancing there, I think. So I traced his movements in space, and neon was the best medium to work with. I couldn't work with LED, just wasn't there. And neon has such a real nice kind of seductive kind of glow to it. So this is the kind of one of his dances. We've done an exhibition from there. And this is some of the other pieces from that show we did with David. Some of the long exposure light drawings were translated into these kind of neon sculptures. And I like the idea of using neon as a three-dimensional form, because sometimes you see neon, it's a signage, it's on a wall, it's flashes, it kind of goes off and on, but it's just more like an advertising sign. And that's fine, you know, but I kind of wanted to bring in a little bit more of a contemporary side of things. And then this is another piece I used, a quick video, I think. Hold on. Let me see. This is a piece actually based on my wife's movements. It's kind of the concept and theory behind it really is, sorry, I'm just messing around. The concept really is based on motion studies of Taylor and Gilbert. They were American kind of scientists, and they studied people's movements, hand movements within factories. And you know, the end conclusion of it was like motion, trying to get people's works within a production line to kind of speed them up. But it kind of drove people crazy, and it was fascinating, that idea of how you can push the human psyche to the absolute limits and get repetitive strain injuries within production lines. And my wife was going crazy with young kids at the stage, and she was ironing and washing clothes and stuff like that. So I kind of traced her movements, her hand movements, folding clothes, baby clothes, and put it inside this kind of capsule, this kind of box. And it has this kind of, the idea of the green and the blue represents the kind of different colors of the gallery we worked with was the R Space there, and it was like a linen based gallery, and we kind of wanted to work just to tie in with the idea of women in society. And I worked with another artist called Sally, and we kind of came together. We all worked together and just developed individual pieces of work along these kind of lines of women working in today's age. What else I got? And then we have this here, next piece, this is the Argy piece, the Artificial Sunshine. And yeah, working with Claire was fantastic. You know, I was a bit nervous working with the National Trust. I was a wee bit concerned. Just, you know, you just have to be so careful and so delicate and so respectful of the environment. And Claire was great, and her team was fantastic. And they really gave me carte blanche. You know, they weren't really telling me what to do. They just says, "There's a blank canvas. You work away." So this kind of, the shapes and the kind of style all comes from me tracing one of the guys who were walking around doing the tour with me. So I put a wee light on him, and I traced his steps all around the building as he went through the different kind of rooms and was telling me all about the history of the house itself. And then I got those light drawings, broke them down, and began to put them in like a spiral shaped form, run down from the top of the staircase right down to the bottom. Because I've seen these spiral patterns throughout the whole house, within the woodworks, within the metalwork, within the design of the staircase itself. And all the colours came from the different ceramics and glass that was around that part of the world, or that part of that rooms, the blues, the yellows, the golds, the pinks, the greens, all that kind of, the colour palette came from the canvas of the building. And this is not human movements, but this is me tracing traffic through urban cities, or whatever it is. So I'm not sure if I have a wee video here. So this is, I started to bring in kineticness to it. A lot of my neon pieces have breathing, and they do have the lights come on and off, and the lights come on and off very slowly, like breath. And this piece is more to do with sound. So when I walked around the cities, I've actually used Queen Street Studios, I think it was. These kind of lights started to flash and react, because when I was walking around and taking the long photographs, I recorded the sounds of the city, the cars going by, the ambulance going by. So this kind of all flashes around and kind of reacts to the sound of the urban landscape. And things like that. And this is the same idea in Broadgate as well. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go back a bit. Yeah, and this is the same idea. Just kind of looking at the environment these neons can be placed in sometimes. And I wanted to take these kind of drawings of light, bring them together into a sculptural format. Again, the colours come from the city itself over in London here. What else was the normal left? Yeah, and this is the normal, and this is the latest one we've done. This is the alleyways. Chris will know this one. He gave me a hand to install it. He was really amazing because it was such a big piece. There was 88, maybe 90 neons in it. Chris actually, I had to go up to his workshop, and he had to light the pieces up for me because there's so many of them. I have a small kind of workshop, and I work with Chris on a couple of jobs. He's helped me with just the logistics. And give me a hand, give me guidance on loading and stuff like that. So Chris has been a wealth of knowledge there, him and his father. So this is another piece. Again, this piece works a wee bit different. It's a bit of a movie to it. It's only about a minute long, but it kind of shows you it flashes on and off. But again, this piece is slightly different because of the alleyways project in Armagh. We had to make a contemporary piece of work based in the alleyways, which is quite difficult. So what I did, I got the kind of stories the people would tell me from those alleyways, people who live in and around, and put those words or those texts, those handwritten notes onto the actual neons themselves. And those hard to see, but some neons you can see text on it, some you can't. And again, this piece kind of is a kinetic piece. It flashes and it comes on and off, just basically with the ambient sound. So if you walk across the floor, or there's a hubba bubba kind of audience around, the neons will react to that kind of sound. I like the idea of the voice affecting the neon. And that's really it, guys. That's all I've got. So I hope that's just a different aspect of neon, a little bit different rather than the on the wall kind of stuff, which is I love. I have it all in my house, but this is a little bit different, and it's kind of more taking it off the wall and just trying something different with it. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I love how you end on like, oh, that's all I got. Like everyone wasn't totally like blown away and wowed by literally every image that you said. We're getting loads of love in the chat here, saying similar things. So I am now, I mean, we could talk about basically all of the things that you've brought up. It was a very short window that we gave you. We could definitely talk about each one of you for an hour, but yeah, time is tight. So what I am going to do is I'm going to pin everybody that we've heard from to the screen. So hopefully all our attendees can see everybody. And then maybe go back to some of the questions that came in. So the first question that we came in was from Paula. It was a question for Chris. Is the gas pure neon or a mixture, and what methods are used now to achieve different colors?
Yeah, all tubes will contain a quantity of neon gas, and we will mix the gases to create different colors. We work with all the inert gases, mainly neon, helium, and argon. And by creating a mixture of those gases, we create the different colors. Neon in its pure form will glow that beautiful reddy orange color that we're all familiar with. And argon in its pure form will burn blue. So by combining those two colors and a combination of colored pigment in the glass and a fluorescent coating in the glass, that's how we combine those three elements, the gas, the glass, and the fluorescent coating. That's how we create the different colors.
Cool, thanks, Chris. And there was another question for you that I'm just trying to get back to, which was Joanne asked, I would like to know more about how neon pieces can be recycled. So you just touched on briefly how there's very little sort of single-use material in your workshop, and obviously with the sort of focus on the environment and sustainability and things like that today, it would be interesting to know a little bit more about that. And maybe actually, Kevin, you could talk about that as well. Is that something that you find? But we'll go to Chris first.
Yeah, sure. Initially, when the tubes are formed and we give them life, with neon or argon gas, the glass has been taken and bent into shape. It never loses that shape. It never loses that form. What essentially happens is that the gas is consumed into the electrodes, which are formed to the end of each tube. So essentially the gas it kind of just gets absorbed. So the tube doesn't need to be disposed of. Essentially, it does not need to be thrown away. It can be brought back to the workshop here and recharged with gas. And then can go back to service again. If, however, has to be disposed of, I mean, the material that's there you're working with is essentially mainly glass. The electrodes have a little bit of barium, so the glass can't just go into the normal kind of recycling system once the fluorescent coating has been removed from it. So essentially, no single-use plastic. There's nothing has to go to landfill. Can all be reused again. Interesting.
And Kevin, yeah, what do you kind of think as a maker? I think sometimes as like glass artists or people working with glass, whatever way you want to call it, we get a bit of environmental guilt, if you make stuff that you're like, oh, I make stuff, and does it need to exist, and what do I do with it? And I'm like, do you find that you use everything in the studio? Is it difficult getting materials? Yeah, maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I think I buy my stuff from England and Italy, glass, whatever it is, and glass itself, the clear glass, non-coated stuff can be recycled in any blue bin. It's when you get the coated stuff, it has to be cleaned off, and that has to be specially cleaned up. But yeah, like Chris, a lot of stuff is very much recyclable. But I like the idea that neon can last over 40 years if done correctly. If it's done right, it can last a long time. And as Chris says, he's probably getting maybe signage now coming into his workshop that his dad's done, and he can clean it up and put it back out there again. And it's not too much you can say, because nowadays you have LEDs and you have plastic signage. A lot of that time, the LEDs, once they go, you can't recycle them. And there's a lot of nasty chemicals in that, in the LEDs that people don't really talk about. The LED guys were very successful in doing about power consumption, but neon itself is quite, some of those neon transformers only use up 25 milliamps, 35 milliamps. An average house plug is 13,000 milliamps. So the power consumption is quite respectable, I think. And I like the fact that you use this in 40 years or 30 years. It might need to be repumped, but that's fine to go for now, 30 to 40 years, you know. So yeah, you know, there's a recycling. Like as Chris says, there's no single-use plastic here at all. You know, in my work itself, everything's replaced and everything can be, you know, even how we tie the neons to a frame is nickel wire. You know, it's all recyclable. So yeah, it's definitely you know, it's obviously there's more better materials out there, but neon's quite special. You know, it's one of the few materials that you can strip back again and reuse. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I think everyone who's on the call is definitely in agreement that it is quite special, or anyone that's been spending any time on any of the various links that we've put in the chat has gone, that definitely is quite special. I wondered if Claire, you had anything, since you're also like a freelance glass conservator, or have you got to the point yet where you're conserving anything like that, like neon signs, other than, you know, the project that you talked about with Kevin, that was obviously filling a space and sort of responding in a very contemporary way, but is there, I know there's quite a few artists and like practitioners on this call who would be interested in it, like have you got any advice for sort of restoration, or even if you're making contemporary work? You talked about, what's that word, like preventative stuff, like advice for looking after things, I guess.
Yeah.
Came to mind.
Gosh, there's a lot there, Meadhbh, there's a lot. So I haven't myself had to conserve any neon glass light, but I have had the pleasure of fixing a light bulb that was part of an installation. It was a Damien Hirst installation. So yeah, it was smashed. And so just to reassure everyone that you can conserve something as fragile as glass, even eggshell thin glass. And we use really, really, I want to say top end viscosity epoxy resins that take several days to cure, and the refractive index is so good that you barely detect the restoration. So if you do break any of your glass, it's not an issue. You know, it can be repaired and conserved. In terms of the neon light, I mean, it's something that the National Trust do not have in their collections. You know, ask us about a 16th century tapestry and we'll be able to write chapter and verse about how that's conserved and stored and all the rest. But we don't have any other neon in our collections, and we have hundreds of thousands of pieces. What I did do when I was engaging with Kevin was to work very closely with conservators in the Tate Modern in London and find out how they conserve contemporary pieces like neon light. And I guess Kevin was probably sick of me at the time. I puked him for method statements and risk assessments, and it was really to fully not only understand how he was going to install it, obviously, and because it's in such a public space, you know, it's really important that that doesn't fall down and crash on a visitor. But it was as much to understand what it's made of, how it's made up, how it goes together, so that we can preserve it for future generations. And I very much worked with our operational risk business partner, and it is something that we are looking at sort of every 3 to 5 years. Well, we carry out PAT tests on it every single year, but just, you know, keeping up those contacts and relations with Kevin is because there's nothing like working with the living artist to be able to fix something or work something out when they're around. And quite often we're scratching our heads as to how to conserve something because the person has passed away for years. So it's about gathering as much information as possible. It's about talking to your network of colleagues at the Tate and wherever. And it's about keeping in touch with the artist, and that's about as much as one can do at this stage. But we're always looking at how we can develop that. But yeah, to go back to your answer, we can fix pretty much any piece of glass. I can fix pretty much any piece of glass. So yeah.
And would that be just to clarify there, Claire, would that be more like when you say you can fix any pieces did? Would that be more like sort of stained glass and like original sort of decorative glass, or
To be fair,
and
it covers the full gamut. When you're trained in glass conservation, you're trained in the technical, the process. It's not really, it's irrelevant whether it's a piece of Venetian or Roman glass, or it's a contemporary piece that was made last week. The principles are the same. How you would bond it, how you would stabilize it, how you would gap fill it. They're all the same processes. So it's about applying yourself to the piece, leaving your ego at the door, not wanting to show off any of your skills, and all the time respecting the maker's mark and getting into the way of how they do things. So a conservator's work is quite selfless. We just want to conserve as opposed to add anything of our own. We don't claim to be craftsmen or women. It's not about it's not about showcasing our work. It's just about conserving the maker's work. I think you're on mute, Meadhbh.
Sorry, yeah, really interesting. I'm sure there's a couple of people noting down your details. There was a question sort of linked there for everybody from Fiona. If you've seen it, I have used neon in the past, but I understand it's fragile. Does it have a long shelf life? Could you site it outside for 5 years and beyond as a public artwork? And I think, well, maybe everybody has maybe something to say on that, sort of already been addressed, but anyone want to answer, Fiona?
Yes, certainly. I mean, well, certainly we have neon that has been installed for well over 5 years, 10 years, in some cases 50 to 60 years. As Claire and Kevin, I'm sure will agree and understand that, the glass isn't going to corrode. The glass isn't going to lose its strength or integrity over time. Specifically with neon, it's more about the number of operating hours. And as the tube is switched on, that's as the life begins to decrease. But to put in context, a neon sign could be expected to last up to 80,000 hours of operation. That's illuminated, switched on, and that is the equivalent. A normal fluorescent light bulb, which we're all familiar with, is only going to last about 5,000 hours. So in terms of how long it's going to last and it lasting outside, absolutely, it's going to last 20, 30 years or more. And very interesting, some of the first stuff that I used to work with here in my dad's workshop would have been the Europa Hotel neon sign. And the pieces of glass would come back to us whenever we had to sort of recharge the neon to it. We had to do a regas, and there was lots and lots of pock marks and little indentations on the glass. And I had to ask my dad, I'd never seen glass like that before. And it turns out this glass had actually survived, I don't know how many different bomb blasts on Great Victoria Street when the Europa Hotel was blown up. The neon wasn't damaged. The tube still illuminated, but the glass actually picked up some little pock marks and damage from the bomb blast. So I think we're one of the very few neon manufacturers in the world that can boast that we make bomb-proof neon.
Amazing. I'm just conscious that we are getting really tight on time here. There was a question for Kevin put through there, which was, how did it feel? So actually, sorry, let me arrange my thoughts there. I think maybe the thing about would it survive, what you'd have to consider then if you were making a public neon artwork is, yes, the glass will be fine, but it's just making sure that it's protected from things like, accidental or deliberate damage by physically going and breaking it or tampering with the wires and that kind of damage, much like any other sort of artwork that's made in a relatively fragile material. I think, yeah, people who work with glass, and I work with a lot of fragile things myself, so can definitely relate to that feeling of, oh no, will it be okay? And then that linked in my brain to the question that was put to Kevin there, which was how did you feel about letting other people handle and install your work, as in the case of the bending glass exhibition in Havelock House. If you want to speak to that for a little moment.
Sure. Yeah, I remember the first time I let somebody handle my work. I was over in England and had to send it over, and the guy says, "Oh, you opened it up? Yeah, it's fine. It's no problem. I'll install it tomorrow." And then I got a phone call the next day going, "Well, this thing's broken." I go, "What happened?" He says, "It's broken the box." And I says, "No, the guy took a photograph of it." So you got to be so careful. People who handle neon have to know how to handle neon. It can't, if you're too rough or too ignorant, you can't break it, you know. So Alexa, Joanne, and Chris was kind of working handling my neon. I was happy, you know. Chris knows neon better than I do, so I was more than happy to let him handle it. And Johanna was kind of organizing it and placing it inside the exhibition. And it's important for an artist not to become too precious about their work. I have a lot of admiration for Johanna. She's a terrific artist, and I really wanted to see what she was going to bring to it. I really give her the building blocks, and I wanted her just to become a child and play with this kind of candy coated stuff and see what she come up with. I think it's only fair because, you know, I can't be everywhere all the time, and I have to trust people. And the neon I gave her was modular anyway, so it doesn't matter what exhibition it's in or what space it's in, it will change shape. So if I'm doing work in one exhibition, it responds to either the void of the space or it responds to actual architecture. Or if you do it to another exhibition or a gallery, it will change its shape to suit the kind of site specificness of it. So I was delighted that Joanne took up the challenge. And what she done, I thought was terrific. I thought it was just fun and enjoyable. And you know, Chris was there. God love him. He's probably sick of me. But he works so hard. And Chris is just fantastic. He just puts things together, wires it up beautifully, and I can't complain. So I was delighted that I'd love to kind of give my work to people I can trust and let them work away and see what they come up with. Because then I learn stuff. You know, see something in a different context. Because artists sometimes can be very blinkered. This is my work. This is what I do. And it's important to let people in.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah, it's definitely really easy to get quite, especially when you work in something that is a bit fragile and is a bit delicate. You know, you can start to get very precious. But in doing so, you know, you're not opening to the possibilities that somebody with fresh eyes might have for it. So yeah, I think that's good advice for lots of fastidious glass people. I'm conscious that we're just 5 minutes over the allotted time, which is really sad because it flew by, and we could definitely talk about all of the topics for multiple hours. But I wanted to come back to Johanna before we ended, just to sort of ask you the burning question. I had actually written down lots of burning questions, but the main burning question that I think we should end on is, you know, what's next? Congratulations that now this is online and accessible, I think we should all say first. But yeah, what's next? If you had a magic wand, what would you do? Will there be more neon projects? Do you think there should be? What would you like to see happen? And take this.
I meant to share some pictures earlier on, which I didn't. So I'm going to backtrack slightly so that you can see a couple of things. That was my inspiration of some of the archive. But obviously you guys can go and look at these in more detail. I'm just not seeing the button to put these full screen. Yeah, so here's a picture of the final installation. I think, you know, like I said at the start, Havelock House is a key point of this. And then, you know, it's wrapped around the whole story of Adrian's life and his experience and him working with artists really closely and him working with, obviously previously having worked with UTV. So I think this is quite a very specific kind of collaborative kind of piece. But I do see it having legs, and I do see it potentially being able to go and work and change with other places, or like Kevin was kind of said, you know, like literally, you know, pieces of his neon gets installed in different ways. And it was a really good way to showcase these local artists who were all connected to Flax as well. And the fact that, you know, potentially Adrian could have made some of these, or even, you know, like Kevin's work, and this is Susan's work as well. So I kind of think that And I was afraid of breaking this. So that's why I asked that question, Kevin, because the whole time, like, and me and Chris were putting it together, I was like, I'm going to break this. But, you know, we kind of wanted to kind of be coming out of the building. So yeah, it's definitely kind of like a one-off piece. But what I see it becoming is potentially something that could grow alongside the Northern Ireland Screen Digital Film Archive. There's a lot of things that are continuing to get archived that weren't used before. So we didn't have some of the footage for Sus, which was a Patrick Kilty show that they had so much neon in that show. So please do watch some of the videos for that AM Light made. You know, that only got archived a few weeks ago. So all of this stuff can grow. Another thing that happened whenever I got really obsessed with the sausage sign, which I got Vanilla Doran to make the animation for, I had been in touch with the guys from Taylor Signs who Adrian had previously worked with. They've been bought over, and there's been some other kind of like neon businesses that have amalgamated in Dublin. But Dublin's a really good place to go and look at neon. They have some things that have been restored, so stuff on O'Connell Street, but there's also some stuff kind of in different part of Dublin. I can't remember which area, but it's one about going bald. It's like, why go bald? So there's other people there who are looking at neon, but we're not Las Vegas. You know, we're not America. Has like a plethora of this stuff. There's neon museums in London, and there's neon museums in America. And I just kind of thought, you know, that this story hasn't really been told. So I kind of maybe imagine this is something that could collaborate with Dublin and maybe reach out to those people. So it was really nice after talking to one of the guys from Taylor Signs. His favorite neon piece when he was a child, he used to get the bus with his mother, and it was the same sign that Adrian had talked about, and it's the same sausage sign. And he had went on a crusade looking for images of it himself, and we've only kind of found one image, and that was an image that I found through a Facebook group and sent to him. So it just shows you that there's this whole community of people who, you know, whether you're a fan of walking past the neon or have a memory, all your memories are important. And this is why Digital Film Archive is so important, because you can submit your home movies, you can submit lots of different things. And it's like, without us having this social history, things like neon could easily get forgotten about, and social history is really important for artists as well, and making new artworks. So yeah, I hope it expands and maybe becomes Ireland wide. Yeah, that would be my takeaway from it.
Oh, thank you so much, Johanna. I just want to reiterate all the thanks to everyone who's participated in this session tonight. I really hope that we will get to you know, do something else, that some of those things will come true, or that there'll be other events to bring together some of the really phenomenal research that you've done. And it's just so exciting to have so many contemporary artists and different voices contributing to the conversation. So thank you everyone on the panel, and everyone who's joined us tonight. Lots of really good praise in the chat. So yeah, hope everybody's happy, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening and catches some of the sun that's still hanging around. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Meadhbh.